Everybody's talking at the comic spot. The comic spot. The comic spot. Everybody's talking at the comic spot. The comic spot.
Facebook. Hi, it's me, Linda Marcus Smith, here with Comic Spot interview number 834. I think. Does it matter? Over 800. That's the point. This is so you can get to know talent off stage. And today we have somebody amazing. He's a personal friend. He's my coach for comedy. He's the reason I've gotten better in the last 6 months. And you get to know him today. You get to whiz through his life.
Whiz through it. Let's whiz through it.
Whiz, that's right. That's the key word. Let me read you the intro I've got. Ty Rivera is a self-proclaimed absolute best LGBTQ comedian in the world, and has been shocking, entertaining, and educating audiences with his stand-up for over 16 years. How many years really is it?
Going on 19 now. That must have been the last time that is this the mic that I used? Okay, That must have been the last time that I updated my website was 2 years ago, which makes sense because I remember having it done. I had it done back in 2000. Who knows? Who cares? I'm sure I wrote the bio even before that, which, all bios are written in the third person, but it's usually just you writing the bio. And but that bio, for the most part, was written by a friend of mine named Tiffany Cabral that used to work for, what was the name of the club she worked for? Stand Up Live in Phoenix. Yeah, she worked for Stand Up Live, and she was in charge of their kind of the publicity and that kind of stuff. And so we're close friends, and she was like, I'll write your bio for you if you want it rewritten. And I was like, okay. And so she wrote it. And so that I'm sure that was accurate at the time. But now we're going on 19 years in February.
How has the 19 years of comedy been for you? Tell people how has comedy changed? How has the LGBTQ presence changed? Your ability to transition and that's the wrong word, but your ability to deliver material and have it received throughout. You've gone to dive bars in the middle of the country.
Yeah, well, you've got to be careful when you use the word transition in this day and age, because you use transition and people are like, is he trans or is he, especially when you talk to an LGBT person. But yeah, well, everything's changing. And so it's changed a lot. Because when I first started, it was in 2003. I started in 2003, and it was, the difference was back then I had to be careful in talking about gay because people weren't as used to it. Queer Eye for the Straight Guy was still kind of new. Will and Grace was doing well, but also was on the newer side. And so people were just really starting to get into accepting LGBT in the mainstream. And at the time, I had to be careful because I just didn't want it to have a negative effect on the people that were close to me, like my family and stuff like that. Then I want to say it was 2013 when I started noticing the shift to the other side, because there was kind of a sweet spot in there where I could kind of get away with anything I wanted to, because people were very open-minded and they were willing to learn. Then there was a point where younger people, and I don't want to be hacky and call out the millennials, but it did have a lot to do with the millennial generation, that started to think that they knew LGBT better than LGBT people knew our stuff, And so me, especially with the way that I was out, because people think of me now, and it's weird the way people describe me, because a lot of people would describe me as a gay comic that hates other gay people. That's one way I've been described. There are some people that describe me as a very straight acting gay person, which I guess that's open to interpretation. I know a lot of guys date me, because they feel like I'm masculine, and so that's attractive in the gay community, as much as people try to make it seem like, we don't worry about that. It is a thing, and it makes me more marketable in the dating world or in the hookup world, But I personally am inside my head. I know what I think, and I know how gay I am. So for me, even though a lot of people will project that onto me, that's not necessarily the way that I see myself. I know where it is I'm coming from on everything. And so when I was able to be out like all the time, and by that I mean, because I have to be careful in my wording, what I mean by being able to be out was when you first start doing comedy, it consumes everything. It takes up all your time. So, I was dealing with that where I was just doing stand-up all the time for the first several years that I was doing stand-up. And so I came from hanging out with trans people. That was pretty much my friend group, was, trans women. I hung out with a lot of trans women, and being out at the clubs all the time, living a real young gay life, because when I started, I was pretty young, not super young, but, young enough. And so it was coming out of the clubbing and hanging out with the trans people and living that kind of life to all of a sudden doing stand-up, and you're kind of immersed in a straight world. And when I first started doing stand-up, because I immediately moved to LA and started performing there all the time. And when I started doing that, what happened was I kind of lost touch in a way with the gay community. And I was like working through a lot of open homophobia, because a lot of the comics used to be very homophobic. I was bullied when I first started. I put bullied in quotes because I'm not exactly easy to bully. So it wasn't like, but like there was definitely like, does every day have to be a fight? Does every day have to be a struggle, especially in the beginning? And I just moved to LA, and everybody thinks of LA as this place that's, super progressive and going to be really open to that. Well, in 2003, it wasn't necessarily that way. And there were certain areas, like, if you were in Orange County, or if you were outside of the West Hollywood area, which is like the gay mecca, West Hollywood, Silver Lake, those areas are very gay and have been for a long time now. But if you were outside of those areas, then you dealt with a fair amount of homophobia. I outright got called faggot by other comedians. The best I could hope for from another comedian in a lot of cases was when they had the "if it happens behind closed doors" mentality. Like that was considered to be, oh, they're very open-minded, And then I met some comics that weren't politically correct at all and used the words all the time, the hate word supposedly. But they were the most open-minded, even though that was the way they joked. And that's when I really learned the difference between sometimes what people say on stage isn't necessarily what they're like in real life. Some people are just very comfortable with using certain terms because that's the way they're raised, or that's the way the LGBT people that they're around. Like, with me, because I'll use those words quite a bit. Sometimes the people around me will start to use those words quite a bit, and people will think they're hateful. And it's like, no, I just made the mistake of exposing them and maybe making them feel like that's all right. And so, that's kind of the way. And so what I was getting at is then there came a point around 2013 where things became so politically correct that now I had straight people telling me what I was allowed to say and what I wasn't allowed to say. And I refused to go with that because I somewhat see some of what I do as me teaching people what actual LGBT is like. We're not as sensitive as the media portrays us. We're not necessarily concerned with the things that people think we're all concerned with. A lot of times that's the LGBT kind of machine that's putting that out there and making it seem like these things are paramount to us, when in a lot of cases they're not. Like with the trans community, I always hear about them talk about the bathrooms, the public bathrooms, as far as the machine goes, and the LGBT community is always pushing that, or the activists are always pushing that. But when I was coming up, the trans people I knew weren't worried about bathrooms. They went to the bathroom that they preferred to go to, the bathroom that aligned with the way that they presented, and we never had any problems. Now, we had a lot of transphobia and homophobia in places you wouldn't expect, like the grocery store line, or, you know, if we're in a Walgreens or a Walmart. I used to do a joke about it with the Walmart, you know, but like in that way, we dealt with discrimination and the phobias. But when it came to the bathrooms, that was never an issue. And so I know that different legislation got introduced, and that's why that became like a thing. But I just don't get like some of the things that they push and they put onto us. And I especially didn't get when people, even now, it's starting to slow down a little bit, but even now, people would try to tell me, well, you really shouldn't say that, and you really shouldn't. And I always feel like, well, so you think that the way to be more progressive and the way to be more open-minded is to tell LGBT people how they shouldn't speak. And now, you know, I've been able to, because I've gotten to a point in my career where I work enough that I don't just have to live at open mics all the time. You know, I still do plenty of open mics, plenty of stuff to work out new material, but I don't have to be there all the time like I did in the beginning. So now I get to live more of a gay life. Like I was just dating somebody for a couple of weeks. I do stress a couple of weeks. It was great, but you know, it was what it was. It was a short relationship. And like, I've been able to live more in that life again. And that's been nice and it's been good. But, like, I'm even more connected now to that part of myself. And I'm around so many other LGBT people that are comfortable with what are supposedly bad words and stuff. And it's like, so you still think you can tell me what it is I should and shouldn't say, even though I'm actively in the community more now. You know, like I'm actively out, but you still think. And when I say, like I said, when I say actively out, I want to be very clear about that, because I've always been out in my set. I've never had a single day in my comedy career where I pretended to be straight or was even slightly closeted. Even in the very beginning, I never did that. There were times that I chose not to talk about gay, and that wasn't because I was at all uncomfortable with it or trying to hide it. I feel like people always know, even though people have told me, if you hadn't said it, we never would have known. But when I would not mention it in certain sets, it would be because I'd be doing a 3-minute, a 5-minute, a 7-minute, a shorter set. And my thinking was, I never want to use the fact that I'm gay as a crutch.
It really bothers me when comedians use something as a crutch.
Yeah.
A different ability, a different lifestyle, overweight, you know.
A different gender.
A different gender.
Yeah, you know, just some people, their entire identity on stage is I'm a woman. And it's like, you know, great, you're a woman. Make that a part of your set. But that shouldn't be your entire personality, because none of us live our lives being entirely what we're seen as by the outside. You know, at the end of the day, we're all people.
Yes.
And that's what's the most relating, or will make you the most relatable in comedy, is when people start to see you as a person and not necessarily whatever makes you unique, or, you know, a different kind of person, or whatever it is.
I don't want to hear the entire set about, like, I'm morbidly obese, move on. We get it, we see it, we accept it.
Yeah, and like I said, if it's part of your set, great, but it shouldn't be the entire thing. You know, like with me, I talk about being gay a fair amount, but that's only because it does come into play. Like if I'm talking about dating, I'm not going to switch the gender of the person that I'm dating in the story or in the joke that I'm doing so that people are more comfortable, because I'm going to be uncomfortable, because then I'm not telling the story the way that it went. So I do have to at least broach that. You know, when I'm talking about my views on LGBT specifically, I think the fact that I'm gay does let people know and give people a better idea of why I'm saying the things that I'm saying and where I'm coming from with saying it. So sometimes it is important. So I wouldn't say like don't do it. But again, like we were saying, it's not your entire identity. So don't make it your entire set.
Yes. Well, you know, the other night something went down at a mic, and it had to do with women feeling like they are entitled to something. So you've been around the business. How many times have you seen that happen where people think they deserve something because they're a woman in a male-dominated business?
Yeah, well, I've seen that happen a fair amount, and I wanted to talk about this on my YouTube channel, and I'll talk about it here. I don't mind talking about it both. If anybody has a chance, check out my YouTube channel, Ty Rivera, Thai, last name Rivera, Rivera. If you search that, my page will definitely come up on YouTube because I'll be talking about this specifically. But here's the problem I have with that thinking. A lot of times, the people that really push that aren't necessarily helping that cause out in a lot, in most cases. Like there was a situation that happened once when I think I was still on the LA comedy scene. I'm not sure if I was still on the LA comedy scene or if I was in Arizona or maybe I was even here already. Anyway, this was a couple years back, like maybe 2 or 3 years ago. And what happened was, there was a female comedian that we'll call D, and D had jumped on and called out a specific comedy club in LA and been like, I noticed there's never any women on the lineups here at this particular comedy club. And I know the owners of that comedy club well, I've been through it with them. But our relationship is good, overall. For me, some people make a big deal of that. Like, every once in a while you get into it with people or something like that. For me, it's not that big a deal. It's a part of business. Sometimes, they don't want to pay you what you think you're worth. There's a little bit of run-in about it. And like, if it all stays personal, because all of my stuff with that particular comedy club did stay on text message. It didn't get onto social media. I didn't make it a thing. We just got into it between us. And so Dee was going through it with this particular comedy club because there was one particular female comic that was like, I get up there plenty. And that was verifiable. She was always there. And so she wasn't just saying that to be argumentative or contradictory. That comedy club has been very good to her. And there are other women that'll do that comedy club. And I knew that, but Dee was going at it pretty hard, And so I hit Dee up because me and Dee were friends. And I was like, hey, I get what you're saying, but I don't think that was necessarily the best way to go at it. I'm going to try to patch the situation up between you and that comedy club. I'll get in contact with the owners and I'll see if I can kind of smooth it over. But I don't really think it's a male-female thing with them. I think it's the limited number of professional female comics that they have to choose from, and also the limited number that they have to choose from on a particular night. Because what happens when you're part of a, segmented population, like female or gay, there's only going to be so many that are actually professional. And on top of that, when you're really good at being something that's different, you're going to get booked all the time. So if you have, and this is like a really low number, but let's say you have 5 female comics that are ready to do a professional level set. Like I said, don't anybody hit me up and be like, 5, there's more than 5. I get it. I'm just giving this as an example. But if you have 5 and all 5 of those women are booked pretty solid, and then you hit them up and they're like, well, I'm busy. At a point, you can't worry about gender, and you're like, okay, let's just throw in comics. Let's just find comics that can fill these slots because we need to, have a particular level at this comedy club for our audience to feel like they didn't get cheated. And so I hit Dee up and I let her know that, and I was like, I'll try to smooth it over with the club for you. So I got in contact with the owner. The owner was like, I like you, but I really don't appreciate that she called us out publicly like that and made such a thing about it, because it did become kind of a busy thread. And so they're, and she put their name in it and everything. So like they're getting dragged right now, or at that time on the internet, they're really going through it. And that does create a bit of a PR mess for them. And so, I hit them up and they were like, yeah, we're still not going to book her because we don't appreciate that that's the way she went at it. So in my head, because to be honest about Dee, I'd always seen her not do well. So, but I remember it wasn't when I was in LA, it had to be when I was already here, because I remember thinking, I haven't seen her in a couple years now. Maybe she's gotten a lot better. And so what I was thinking was, I have a gig coming up in Arizona. She has mentioned to me before that she has family in Arizona. And this particular gig, even though it's at an actual comedy club, because a lot of times they like to use local talent for the feature spot and the host spot, they don't pay for a hotel room for features and hosts. For anybody that's at home and you're not comedy related, please know that this is not the most uncommon thing in the comedy world. Even though I agree that it's kind of bullshit that, you know, features get paid so little, but that's a different conversation. We can talk about that in a few if you want to, but let's stick to this one right now.
Yeah.
So they were like, you know, so this particular comedy club doesn't pay for a feature to have a place to stay. So I was like, you know, since you have a connection there, maybe you could stay with your mom, because that's who lives there, is her mom. I was like, maybe you can stay with your mom and, you know, you can feature for me for that weekend. So she says, okay. And she had several months to even prepare. You know, if you're not ready now, work over the next couple of months. And so I expected her to just do that, because to me, at this point, you're not just performing for yourself anymore. Now you put yourself in a position where you're showing why more women need to get more opportunities, which I don't think is a good position to put yourself in. I just be like, this is why I should get more opportunities. You know what I mean? I'm going to show you why I personally, because if you're what you are and that's something different, you know, that's representing a different community, whether it's, you know, female or LGBT or whatever, just you being good at what you do will elevate that population, you know, within
Absolutely.
the comedy community. And so I told her this. I was like, you know, let's make these dates happen. And she was like, okay. I got in contact with the club and I was like, I'm gonna have Dee feature for me. They were like, we haven't met her, we haven't heard of her. But a lot of the clubs I work for, because everybody knows that I am kind of discriminating when it comes to comedy, you know, when it comes to what I'll bring on the road. I don't bring along drinking buddies. I don't bring along party buddies. I don't bring along people that are cute. You know, I bring along people that can do the job. Yeah, and so that's what I need from people. That's what I'm known for. So the comedy club was like, okay, well, you know, we'll definitely make sure that she's, you know, marked down as your feature. So a couple months later, we go to do the comedy club. Night one, she shows up looking like she just rolled out of bed, which, whether you're male or female, I feel like you should look stage ready. You don't have to be dressed to the nines, but, you know, at least a t-shirt and jeans, not a strappy pajama top. And I'm not exaggerating. This is literally what she was wearing: strappy pajama top and sweatpants. And I felt like, are we doing a slumber party or a comedy show? But, you know, okay, maybe that's your persona. You know, I don't know what's going on. I haven't seen you in a couple of years, or maybe this is just since it's Thursday, because we did 5 shows together. You know, Thursday to Saturday, which 1 show Thursday, 2 Friday, 2 Saturday. She goes out on stage, proceeds to completely bomb, to the point where the owner comes back to me while I'm in the green room, because I sat in for a second, you know, just to see her get, you know, start off her set. I saw it wasn't going well, and I was like, I don't think I have to watch this, you know.
What are you gonna learn?
Yeah, I don't even know what to do right now. Like, literally, I was a little embarrassed because this is my name. You know, I'm the one that vouched. I'm the one that got you this set. So it got so bad that the owner comes back to me when I'm in the green room, and he's like, are you sure she's featured before? And I was like, I thought she had. And so But again, anybody can have a bad night. That's the way comedy works. You know, I could have a bad night. You could have anybody could. And so I'm not holding that against anybody that they're not necessarily having the best set, especially a Thursday, whatever else. Maybe the audience is weird. I haven't been on yet, you know. They seemed all right for the host, but let me keep an open mind, you know. I get on stage, completely kill it. And they were great, you know, super great. And so at that point, I'm still cool because I'm thinking, like I said, it's a Thursday, anybody can have a bad night, you know. Tomorrow she'll get it right. So Friday she shows up and she tells me that she just won a bunch of money at the casino the night before because she stayed gambling in, you know, North Scottsdale or wherever the casino is over there. I'm from Arizona too, and I should know, but there's some casino on a reservation that's far out, you know, northwest and so or northeast. And she had gone to that casino. She won like $2,200, which congratulations on winning $2,200. But you know, I wish you had gone home and worked on your set. I didn't say that to her though. I just, you know, it is what it is. I'm gonna let this play out how it plays out, and I'm not gonna try to get in your head by telling you how terribly you've done the night before. I feel like you as a comedian should already know that and you should correct that.
Absolutely.
So she goes up, show one, Friday night, completely bombs again. And so show one, what I forgot to mention was because she had done so poorly on the Thursday, the owner had chosen to have the opener do a longer set so she could do a shorter set because the opener was, you know, a friend of mine that's super funny, super good. I didn't book him, the club did. You know, I didn't want any say in who the opener was because I didn't care, you know, and I know that they're going to pick somebody that's all right, you know, or cool. This opener is really funny, you know, and I like him a lot. His name is Michael Turner, and he's now living in LA, but he was in Phoenix for a long time. If you ask me, he's a Phoenix comedian. He's probably one of the Phoenix comedians, and I love him. And so he goes up and kills it, does what he does. She has a shorter set, eats it again. So second show for Friday, they cut her time again. Eats it again. Yeah, so shorter and shorter sets, and you still aren't doing well. And at this point, I'm keeping my thoughts to myself, but in my head, I do kind of want to explode. You know, I do, because I'm just like, how is it in 3 sets you haven't figured it out with your set getting shorter and shorter each time? Do you not have any good material? And what she was doing was something that I see a lot of people do. Instead of at any point trying to switch up the material in any way that's going to make the audience or endear you to the audience, instead she was getting dirtier, raunchier, ruder. You know, it was all just getting worse and worse. And so then we go back for the Saturday night. Now I'm completely embarrassed because, you know, like I've proven to the owner that he can't trust my word anymore. Or, you know, that at least I'm on shaky ground. And I know, and I like using those opportunities to help other comedians. You know, if I can get you in at a club, the way that I see it is if I bring you out to a club, I want you to either get rebooked on your own through that club, or ideally you get bumped up to my spot the next time you come to that club. Then you don't need me at all for that. You know, now you've built your relationship with that club. That's a lot of times what I use my stuff for. That's why I try to bring funny people along, because I want them to get rehired. I want them to get work. And so that obviously wasn't happening with her. So Saturday night, the owner brought in a whole other comedian to split the time with her even more. She still wasn't getting it. She eats it on the Saturday early show, comes back to the green room and has the nerve to say, these audiences are really weird. And I don't know what it is about these audiences. I mean, they hate me. And I felt like, no, they don't hate you. They're giving you every chance possible. If they hated you, they would boo you like you deserve. But all this, again, is in my head because I'm trying to stay professional. I don't want to have any kind of run-in. I don't want to have any kind of drama. I'm still, my sets are going really well every show. Like, I'm from Arizona. There's, you know, the fact that, I'm not shooting my own horn, but there is the fact that I am a good comic to begin with. But then you put me in home court advantage, you know, I know everything about like those particular parts of Arizona. Like, you know, we were in Glendale, which is, my parents live in Glendale. So we're in like really home for me. So I can do all local references if I want to. I don't choose to, but I do plenty because I like people to, when I'm at home, I like people to feel like this guy really knows, what we're about. And like, and I'll say the worst things to them, because we're in Arizona. I'll remind them we're trash. I'll remind them we're racist. I'll remind them that you may not live in a trailer park, but you have a family member that does, like this is the way I play with my people, and they get it. I don't have bad sense in Arizona, even a little bit, like they just get me. And so, so there's that going on too, where I feel like, well, I'm not going to ruin my night giving this person dressing down that clearly doesn't get it anyway.
Absolutely.
So then the last show eats it again. Then I'm driving home because I always leave right after the shows. I have a saying, like, even though I'm from Arizona and I could stay if I wanted to or whatever, I don't like to cuddle with the one night stand. As soon as the show's over, I leave. That's the way it works. And so, especially like that, if I'm flying, I don't have a choice. I have to wait till the next one. But if I'm driving, Arizona to Vegas is 4 hours. So I'm just leaving right after the show. I don't party, I don't drink. So there's no reason for me to stick around. I think I stuck around because I had, because every show since I'm in Arizona, people will come out that I know, friends, people that have been watching me from the beginning, that kind of stuff. So I think I stuck around and, had a water while my friends that came to see me on that last show were having drinks and, had that kind of situation go on. So I may have stayed like an hour and a half. She had somebody there, some people there, and she was there too. So I'm driving home, and this person actually has the nerve to say to me, she calls me and she was like, I just want you to know that I had a really good time and I appreciate the opportunity. And I really look forward to working together in the future. And I still kept my mouth shut, but in my head, I felt like, no, you burned that bridge. Like, you're not going on the road with me again. Like, I would never bring her on the road again. And not just because she didn't do well, but because I really feel like if you're going to say women need to get more opportunities, everybody needs to be more open to booking women, then when you get that opportunity, you knock it out of the park and you show why women need these opportunities that you're saying that women need. You don't be the reason that people think women aren't funny, which isn't fair. I agree. When people say that women aren't funny, I'm not a person, like my favorite comics, and a lot of people are usually surprised by this, but my favorite comics coming up were women. I loved Whoopi Goldberg, even though she did more like one person show. I loved Roseanne Barr. I loved Elaine Boozler when I was younger. I loved Rita Rudner. I grew up, Ellen DeGeneres, before she came out of the closet, which Ellen DeGeneres is a powerhouse. Whatever people want to say about her not being a nice person or the scandals behind the scenes or whatever like that, I didn't know anything about that. I didn't care anything about that. It wasn't even happening when I was a kid. She didn't have a show. I remember Ellen DeGeneres from a show on HBO called Women of the Night. And it was like, they did two of them. It was like Women of the Night 1 and Women of the Night 2. And it was like, Paula Poundstone, which is another one of my favorite comics coming up. Thea Vidal, also one of my favorite comics.
Who's that?
Thea Vidal is a Black woman that was really big in the 80s, late 80s, early 90s. Rodney Dangerfield, she was on his, I think it was on Showtime. Was his, and it was like a Rodney Dangerfield Presents, and Bill Hicks was on it, like there were a lot of up and coming comics that Rodney kind of plucked from the comedy scenes and was like, these are people I want to put on. And Thea Vidal was one of them. And I ended up being fortunate enough to go on the road with her, like one of the first times I went on the road. And these were my influences coming up. So I don't think it's fair to say that women aren't funny, but sometimes when I see the women that are squawking the most about, we need these opportunities, a lot of times I know those women, like even if you read the blogs, because now it's settled down on that too, but for a minute it was really hot on the blogs for female comics to be writing, these think pieces about these are why women need to get more opportunities. Well, a lot of times those women are LA and New York. LA is a scene I worked for 14 years. So sometimes I'd look at who was writing these articles and I'd be like, I know that woman and she's not funny at all. She is not the person that should be making this speech. But the problem is the women that should be making that speech are too busy working, too busy being the change that they want to see to sit down and write an entire article about why it is they're not getting opportunities. What they're trying to do, like, if you look at some of the women that are really making moves right now in the industry, there's like Carmen Morales, there's Kate Quigley, there's Jessica Michelle Singleton, like the women, and I could name more, but the women that are really making moves in the industry are too busy putting out content. They're too busy working on their social media. They're too busy doing all the things that they need to do to get the opportunities that they need to get for themselves because they know that the industry isn't just going to give it to them.
Absolutely. I think women have to work hard to be seen as funny, and I don't think that's a bad thing. It motivates. If I'm up against adversity, I will work 10 times as hard.
Yeah, well, women have to work harder to even be heard, period. It's just the way, and it's unfortunate that that's the way it's set up. But people of color have to work hard. LGBT people have to work hard. There are comedians literally that have less credits than I do that work more because they're straight. And that's just the reality of it. Now, I could sit and go on a bender all day about this person is getting this and I'm not getting that. Or I can work on what I need to work on to get myself where I want to be and then not have to complain about that. And then provide those opportunities to other people that I see that deserve it, that are just comedians. Because when it comes to me and funny, I'll help anybody out. I don't care if you're a white cisgender male. I don't care if you're a transgender person. I don't care if you're a woman, whatever. As long as you're funny, if I can bring you along, you're professional, you're not a headache to me on the road, I'm going to help you out. So I can provide the opportunities that I want to see be given out, instead of like sitting at home and writing on Facebook, which every once in a while I'll vent on social media about something that I consider to be unfair. But if you notice, that's not usually the focus of my social media.
No.
I don't just go after these people are being overlooked. It's like, well, create more opportunities.
Yeah. You've got to, like, if you always look at the negative side, the business side of comedy is horrendous for anybody.
Yeah.
Like I've probably quit more times than I've gotten on stage.
Yeah.
Every day, every comic that I've interviewed, if I ask them how many times have they thought about quitting, everybody thinks about it every day. It's hard.
Yeah. Well, and that's the nature of the beast, and that's why, but it's also like they say, if it was easy, it wouldn't be worth it. I think that's like the saying, and so it's true, and then there's the other factors that, we all have that maybe, there's some self-sabotaging that happens with some people. Some people have problems with alcoholism, substance abuse, there's so many different things. Life getting in the way, some people have kids, some people are married. Like there's so many things that can keep you from getting where you want to go in the time that you think you're supposed to get there, so instead of putting pressure on yourself about what you're supposed to do, just do what you need to do in the moment and make things happen, or trust that things are going to happen the way that they're supposed to.
I used to moan and groan when I was in Portland that I wasn't getting booked. And the truth of the matter in retrospect is I wasn't funny enough.
And that's very self-aware of you, to actually accept that. I was having that conversation yesterday with TC Morgan. We had a conversation about that kind of stuff, where it's like, if you're not going to be honest with yourself, then you're just going to keep beating your head against the wall. Because sometimes you do have to accept that maybe you are funny enough in conversation, but if those jokes aren't tight in a showcase situation where they're looking to book you, or at an open mic where you have an opportunity to get booked, then you can't blame anybody but yourself. You've got to tighten up those jokes. You got to figure out what your system's going to be. That's for you to figure out,
Absolutely. So, like, of the things that happen on stage for everybody, what are some things that drive you nuts that you wish people would avoid?
As far as, could you be a little more specific?
Yeah, like when you're sitting, I've seen you watch and study comics, and I know you know what you're looking at. I gotta see somebody 10 times to know what they're doing. It took me a year to know what Letterman was doing.
Yeah.
But you can pick it up right away, and you don't give away how you feel. So I'm curious what you feel that drives you nuts when people get up on stage.
People that are too nervous to give the audience an opportunity to laugh drives me crazy.
So rushing the material.
Yeah, and they'll step on their own laughs. Like in my head, I'll be like, that's where you could pause. And if you would pause, they would laugh. And then that would give you the the momentum to go into the next bit. And then you could get an honest read of how the next bit did. If you do your punchline and you're like, and then all of a sudden it's like, well, now they can't laugh because they're going to quiet down to hear what it is you have to say. You know, I have some punchlines that are real powerhouse punchlines. And if I talk through them, talk through the end of the punchline or don't give them a pause, they're not going to laugh like they should because I cut my own laughs off. Sometimes I purposely do that if I'm doing a showcase and I know that I have, 5 minutes or 7 minutes, and I'm like, I need to get to my closer. And I'm pretty well aware of time because I came up. There was this one particular booker that in a way I hate him, but at the same time I'm very thankful to him. I hate him because he was meaner to us than he had to be. I think he could have been just as effective and been nicer and been more fair. But at the same time, I'm thankful for him because he had this way of like just cutting things off. Like, if you went over your time, as soon as you got 1 second over your 5 minutes, he would immediately get on the other mic and be like, all right, well, that's, that comedian. And he'd like shut you down. You weren't supposed to curse on the early shows. The early shows were TV clean sets. If you even gave a slight curse, he'd immediately pull you off stage. Yeah, and so it really did train us, or train me and a lot of the comedians that did it, because, some people are hard-headed and will never come back and they'll blame him, and, but the rules are the rules. If you accept a job, you accept a job. And I would show up every week. And the thing was, the one place that I did respect him was he was also forgiving. So if you messed up 1 week and you're apologetic about it, like, I'm sorry, I didn't mean for the F word, because I personally was good about the not cussing part. I never got pulled for that. But one of my friends, he just cursed all the time in regular conversation. So, one time he had just started with he didn't even say the full word. He just got the F out of the, and he got cut right away. It was like, you got to get off stage, you're done. And he right away was like, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to, it just was going to slip out. But the guy's name was Steve. I won't give away his last name because he might still be around. And not that I worry for any other reason, but because I'd rather not flame somebody that I haven't seen in years, But he would be like, okay, well, tighten it up and come back next week. Just don't do it again. And so, at least you had an opportunity to grow and learn from it.
And it's such a great challenge because, like you said, you can get on late night or on a USO tour.
And I really feel like a good comic, and some people will get mad at me for this, but I really feel like a good comic should be well-rounded and clever enough to be able to do both. Now, if you get to a point in your career where you're like, I don't want to be clean anymore, then that's a different thing. But to completely not be able to do it, to not be capable of it, like Bill Burr has done Saturday Night Live. He was able to be Bill Burr, but he wasn't, cursing up a storm. Dave Chappelle has done Saturday Night Live. Both of these people have done it within the last 12 months. So obviously they were willing to work around the parameters that network TV sets aside to collect that check, to get that publicity, to get their word out, to, do their jokes. So if comics on that level can do what they need to do, can play the game, then how is it you on the open mic scene are too big for that? Yeah, so it's, that part does drive me crazy. Because I'll hear people talk about me like that sometimes, Ty Rivera would never change his material. Ty Rivera just does what he does, you know, because everybody knows me for just saying what I want to say for the most part. But that's not true at all. You know, I do change my material. I just did, you were there when I did Laugh Factory, and I did a weekend or a week's worth of shows at the Laugh Factory. So we did 14 shows, I believe. I think it's 2 a night for all 7 nights. Or was it 3 on the weekends? I think it's 3 on the weekends, 3 on Friday, 3 on Saturday. I can't remember. I have terrible memory. Anyway, we did at least 14 shows. I was in the position of hosting. Now, at the Laugh Factory, they'll let you do pretty much what you want to do, but they don't want you to be too dirty in the hosting position. Well, I personally don't really think hosts should be dirty. That's just the way I feel about it. And so, you know, if a host that is working my weekend and I'm headlining is being dirty, I probably won't say anything about it unless they really go overboard. But, you know, it's just the way I feel about it. So I feel like I can't be a hypocrite and not want people to be dirty when they're hosting for me. But now here I'm hosting and I'm being super dirty. So 2 of the shows, I felt like the audience deserved a little bit of dirtiness. But it was just a smidge. It was just enough to get them in line and let them know I wasn't playing with them, you know, because they were kind of rowdy or whatever, you know, and I had to deal with them in that way. But like the other 12 shows, I was completely clean. And so it's not like, you know, even I think I'm above doing what you have to do for whatever the job is. I tell people that all the time, like, play your position. Learn how to play your position. Whatever that position is, play your position. If you're the host, be the host. If you're the feature, be the feature. If you're the headliner, be the headliner. But play your position.
Now, I've heard some comedians talk in the green room or before they go on stage that they plan on being funnier than the headline. And I think that's a topic very few people, I've never asked anybody this, but I think that's that's kind of you should just be funny. I don't think you should get up there and make a game to be funnier than the headliner. What do you think?
I think your plan should be to be as funny as you can possibly be. Mm-hmm. That's what I think your plan should be. But I don't think your plan should be to be in competition with anybody. You know, I still feature as well. You see, because I tell people I want to work.
You do anything.
Yeah.
I've seen you do it all.
Yeah, I hosted the open mic at Wise Guys not too long ago. Some comics would think, you know, because they're working that they shouldn't be hosting an open mic. I'm like, no. I mean, like, if it's another way for me to work, it's another place for me to do material. Also, I get to see comics that I haven't seen before because, you know, at each open mic, there are certain comics that maybe only go to that open mic or that's the only one that works for them. So you do get exposed to comedians that you haven't seen before. You make new friends. You get fresh takes, you know, you get to see stuff that you're not seeing. But yeah, so I do everything. And like when I'm featuring, my thing is I'm not going to throttle myself so that you can look better as the headliner. If you can't follow what I do, then maybe you shouldn't be headlining. But that's not for me to decide. That's for the club and the audience to decide. I'm just there to have the best set that I can possibly have. And really, in my opinion, the feature's job is to create a good environment for the headliner to go up. That's really what your job is at that point. When I say play your position, like my job is to do as well as I could possibly do, but also to stay away from crowd work for the most part, unless it absolutely calls for it and I have to do a quick second's worth of crowd work because, you know, somebody's unruly or something like that. But outside of that, stay away from crowd work because I'm there to make sure that the audience is ready to hear the headliner's material and they're in that space. Now, if the headliner decides that they want to do crowd work, that's on them. Do all the crowd work you want to do. You're the headliner. But I don't feel like I'm supposed to do that as the feature. And even if I don't particularly like a headliner, I won't go out of my way to make it hard for them.
That's great. I'd like to talk to you about your career because you've done some amazing things. You've traveled around the world. You've been in on Comedy Central. You've got all kinds of IMDb credits, like a writer, producer, and actor. I would assume if you written.
Unfortunately, I've acted.
Yeah, let's talk about your entire. Can you take me through your entire how that went from A to Z?
Yeah, well, the first thing that I did that was TV. See, this is the other thing too, like people don't understand, is when you first start doing TV credit or getting TV credits, unless you're like some kind of internet sensation and you really have bargaining power. But back in when I was first starting, I almost said back in my day, like an old person, but back when I was first starting, the internet wasn't like that. You know, like there was maybe Angela Johnson had popped on the internet at that point, you know, but she was like one of the few. And it wasn't like now where you have influencers and, you know, the whole spectrum of what's happening on the internet. Back then, there was pretty much YouTube and that was it, you know? And so the thing with the way that that worked out was the first credit I ever got was for the Logo Network, which was a gay network that was owned by MTV, VH1, both, I don't know. But whoever owns MTV also owned the Logo Network. So I got asked to do a show called One Night Stand Up. Yeah, I think it's One Night Stand Up. I got asked to do that show. And that paid $500 and there was no residual on it. You know, you just make $500 flat rate. And there were some comedians that were like trying to talk me out of doing it because they were like, well, if you're only going to get $500, you're not going to get any residuals. And my feeling was, I want to get this credit so that I can use it as leverage or a springboard to getting more credits. And so I did that. It went super great. Then there was a comedian that was being snotty with me in a green room. And he was telling me, you know, I just sent in my my tape for, and at the time he did literally send in DVDs or VHS. And he was like, I just sent in my material for Comedy Central to do live at Gotham. And I was like, oh wow. And I was like, who'd you send it to? And then he was like, well, you send it to so-and-so. And he told me the name of the lady, but he said it because he was being snotty like that. And that was literally the way he's talking. I'm not doing just a bad impression of somebody. He was like, well, you sent it to so-and-so. And the way he was saying it was like, you would never have a chance anyway. So I'm just going to tell you, you know? And so, so I was like, okay. And I wrote down the name or whatever. Then I went home to, I don't remember if it was MySpace or Facebook. No, it was Facebook. Yeah, it was already Facebook. And I found that person on Facebook. It was a lady that handled that for Comedy Central. And I sent her a stupid Facebook message, like, you know, like a dummy because I was new, you know. And so I was like, you know, hey, I'd really like to be on Live at Gotham, and what would be the process for me to submit and that kind of stuff. And so she was like, send me a DVD to, and she gave me the full address for Comedy Central, care of her name. I don't even remember her name. I wish I did. But she said to send it to her. And so I went ahead and did what she said and really didn't expect to hear back. And then like a couple months later, I was on the road and I got a call from the guy that was handling the booking for that. And he was like, hey, it's so-and-so. He was like, I just wanted to find out if maybe you'd be interested in showcasing for Comedy Central's Live at Gotham. And I was like, yeah, I'd love to. And so he told me what date it was going to be. And that one, you know, that one I did a lot of strategizing, even though I never wrote my set. I never knew what I was going to say. I was just like, it'll just come to me, I guess, because I kept meaning to, and then it never happened. And so I did the showcase in Irvine, which, like I told you, Orange County, Irvine. Irvine was known for being like, you know, conservative or whatever. That's what everybody would say. But I'd done Irvine at that point because Joe Coy and I think some other people. And so I was comfortable at Irvine. I was happy to be at Irvine. And I did the showcase and people were just bombing. And then I went up and some people did okay, but it was like everybody else was caught up in their nerves. And me, I kind of go into things with the idea, like a mental game that I play with myself on showcases or things that matter is I tell myself that there's no way I can get it anyway. And then that takes all the pressure off because then it's like, just have a good set, you know, because you can't get it anyway. So if you can't get it, you can't lose it, you know? And so that's my thing. Even though some people would say that that's negative or putting negative into the universe or whatever, this works for me mentally, you know? And so I'm always like, there's no way I can get this anyway. So I might as well just go out and have a good set. And so I went out and absolutely destroyed it, to the point where every other comic that was there that night, you know, and there were some really good comics, friends of mine, you know, people that I've known for years, you know, at that point. And like I said, it was new-ish, like I was maybe 5 or 6 years in. And so, you know, I was just starting to work the road. I mean, like, that's the way everything was happening right then. And so there were people that I'd known for the whole 4 or 5 or 6 years. And everybody was just like, you got it, for sure, you got it. I'm sure you ended up getting it. And then I just put it out of my head, because again, my thinking is, there's no way I can get it. Like, you know, yeah, it was a great set and I was there and I was aware of that. But at the same time, there's no way I can get it. So I'm not going to stay up nights thinking about it. I completely put it out of my head. Then one morning, I'm in the Bay Area and I'm watching the news, and Farrah Fawcett died, and then Michael Jackson died on the same day, and nobody cared about Farrah Fawcett once Michael Jackson died. It was too bad, you know, because she really was a TV icon. But then the King of Pop dies, and it's like, well, you know, there went Farrah's moment. And so, so it was that day, and then they call me and tell me that I am actually have been booked. I'm going to be doing Live at Gotham. And so that's how I got Live at Gotham. And then I did some stuff in between, like I did, what was it? Because that was in 2009, I think. And then I did like a little movie with Murray Langston, the unknown comic, which, like, I'm going to tell you a story that pisses me off about the unknown comic. Is like, Murray Langston, I love him. He's such a great guy. Yeah. But like, at the point that I worked with Murray Langston, I had worked with Joe Coy, who was like, you know, super big already, not as big as he is now, but he was super big. I worked with him for 1.5 years. I worked with Russell Peters. I mean, like, I worked with some of the biggest names in stand-up comedy. And my parents never knew anybody, you know what I mean? And then I tell them that I'm working with Murray Langston. They're like, oh, the unknown comic. And I'm like, that's the one. Damn it. But, you know, but anyway, so I don't remember how I met Murray, or if he just heard my name, but he asked me to do a movie he was working on, called Dirty Jokes, the movie. And so, I needed money to get my eyebrows done.
I love Rivera.
That's the reason I did the movie, you know, because I needed money to get I don't act, and so really I didn't want to do it, but I did it because I needed to get my eyebrows done. And I was like, if I do this movie, I'll get my eyebrows done. So, like, you know, I'll have the money to get my eyebrows done. So I did the movie for him. It was a really fun experience. One of my scenes got cut, though, and it was just because, yeah, I got cut. This mic had it with my antics. What?
I don't know why they don't color code sides.
Okay. So, I don't, the reason that one of my scenes got cut was because it was like, in watching it, because it was a scene where a gay man approaches a straight man, because all of the movies were like, you know, act outs of jokes. And so there was one where there's this really big guy, big in stature, his name's Alex Moore, and we were really good friends. He's supposed to be like having a drink at a bar, and I, as a gay man, go to hit on him, you know, and he just puts his hand back like that and hits me. And I fly off of fly out of frame. And they had like a, you know, not an air mattress, but like a mat for me to fall onto, you know, so I wouldn't hurt myself. And then they put like, I had to get fake blood, you know, I had to take this capsule that was fake blood. And they make it look like I got beat up. You know what I mean? Like, just from him hitting me like that. And I don't remember what the official punchline of the joke or whatever was, but I wasn't particularly opposed to it, especially back then. It wasn't considered a thing, I didn't think, but in watching the final cut, Murray was like, yeah, it just looks homophobic and it looks bad and it looks like, you're just a gay man getting beat up. And so, so they cut that one. But, like, I think I was maybe in 2 scenes in that movie, or I don't remember. Maybe it was 1 scene because it was just different jokes. But, it was super exciting. We went to Warner Brothers, like the studio. We got to go to the lot and we watched it on the big screen and stuff like that. I ended up going straight to DVD, but, it was a credit. Then I did Gabriel Iglesias' Stand Up Revolution, which was on Comedy Central. I did that in 2013. Then after that, I kind of was done with Comedy Central, and not like, oh, I'm done with them, but just like our relationship had kind of run its course, because the first time they put that out in 2000, I think it was late 2013, they put it out, and it got really good response, all the way around. Then they held it for a little while and they put it back out. And within that short amount of time between 2013, 2014, people became significantly more politically correct. And so there were people hitting me up saying that I was racist and whatever else. And that kind of, like, it didn't end my relationship with Comedy Central. Like, there was no official end as far as, like, they didn't hit me up. I didn't hit them up. It wasn't like that kind of thing. But it was just kind of like, yeah, I'm probably at this point a little too edgy. And I feel like I can, because like I told you, I can take the cursing out of everything, but like as far as what I'm going to say as an LGBT man, as a gay man, I'm not necessarily going to say what the gay community wants me to say, because that's where I do draw the line. Like, I'm not going to be a mouthpiece for any political group or any, particular. Thank you. And yeah, I won't. I mean, like, I had people do it for me, like with politics, where they wanted me to do it with politics. They wanted me to do it with LGBT specifically. And it's just not what I want to do. I don't want my comedy to be a bunch of people just clapping instead of laughing and just agreeing that I'm right. You know what I mean? Or I'm saying the right thing. Maybe I'm not even right, but I'm saying the right thing. So I didn't want to be that. And so that kind of, put the Comedy Central stuff on ice, at least for now. I mean, like, I think, because, they loved like, because, like, when I did the Gabriel Iglesias thing, like, I got a standing O if you watch the end. I really, like, and it was, like, such a great set that I was uncomfortable because they were taking so long to laugh. And I knew I had an allotted amount of time to do, but I also knew that they were going to edit it. I also knew that Gabriel Iglesias was running it, and Gabriel Iglesias had, like, just met me right before he booked me for that. Like, that's the reason he booked me, because he just by chance saw me performing again at the Irvine Improv. The Irvine Improv has been good to me. That's also where I recorded my album back in 2012, I think it was. So Irvine Improv has just been like a lucky spot for me. And that's where Gabriel Iglesias saw me. He saw me. He immediately asked me to do it. I assumed, again, that he was just Hollywood, or anybody who was just Hollywood talking to me. When he said that, I assumed he was Hollywood talking to me. And he was like, take down my phone number right now so I know how to get a hold of you. Send me a text message. And so I sent him a text message. And then again, I wasn't expecting to hear from him. The next day at 2 p.m, he hits me up and repeats one of my lines in the text message, and it's like, you're hilarious. I still want you to do the show. So I called him, and then, I had to showcase for Comedy Central. That went great. Then when I did it that night, technically, I hope that one day they release the unedited version of that, because it started off with a woman heckling me, and I handled that, and then I just went straight into my material. And I was doing so well, and people were laughing for so long that I was uncomfortable, and I was just sitting there. But I knew that I had, like, prepared 5 minutes worth of material, so I didn't worry about, like, the time on the clock. Instead, I just did the full amount of material that I was supposed to do, so that it would be 5 minutes when they edited out the laughter and stuff like that. They ended up using about 3, or maybe it was 7 that I was supposed to do. They ended up using about 3, and that was just because, that's the way they edited it, because of, Gabriel and then the other comedians, because it was like several of us. So then that was super great, and I still work off of that credit. Like, some people still hire me just because of that. Then I went on the road with Gabriel Iglesias for a while after having been on the road with Joe Coy, like I said, for a year and a half. Russell Peters, I worked with him a couple of times. I didn't work with Russell a lot. There was a time when he really wanted me to work for him. But at that time, I was working for Joe Coy, and Joe Coy was giving me so much stuff, because Joe Coy had me booked out for like a year or whatever. So I really wasn't able to work in, working with Russell. And then Russell, got other guys or stuff like that, but we're still friends to this day. Then I won World Series of Comedy right after I did Gabriel Iglesias' show. Then I was on the road for a while. Then I did some stuff for All Deaf Digital, which it's too bad. It's unfortunate that Russell Simmons ended up getting Me Too'd because, he was the big money pushing that network. And Russell Simmons, I never had a personal relationship with him. I never met him, I met him. That's a lie. I met him and he told me how funny he thought I was. But I never was friends with him. We never had any kind of drinks or, went to dinner together or anything like that. And when I say dinner, I mean business, not I thought we were going to date. He's a straight man. But I better be clear because sometimes, there's rumor. Every time a black man gets successful, there's rumors that they're gay. So especially a person like me, I have to be careful about the way that I phrase that kind of stuff, because then it gets heard by the wrong person and they're like, Russell Simmons was trying to date Ty Rivera. And it's like, that's not at all what I was trying to say. But we had no personal relationship at all, but he really liked my stuff. And
He's a smart man.
Yeah, he's a very smart man. And he's really good was really good at promoting things, like making things happen, having celebrities show up, that kind of stuff. So what happened was I did the Roast of America for him, which was on All Deaf Digital. And then a couple months after that, he had me do the All Deaf Digital Movie Awards, which, Mike Epps was the host of that. Snoop Dogg was in the audience. LL Cool J was in the audience. I mean, they're big celebrities, and then I was sitting with Amber Rose and Black China.
Oh my gosh.
I was literally at the table with Amber Rose and Black China, and, that was a really great situation. Then Russell Simmons got Me Too'd, and so that gave pause at the network and stuff like that, and that changed, what was going on with what I had going, because even though I didn't have a relationship with him, Russell Simmons was the one really pushing for me on that network. And I think it was because I'm a person of color, gay, and funny. So, once that happened, then I didn't really keep up with them very much. And then, that's when I moved to Arizona and I was there for a year. And that was kind of I wouldn't say stagnant time, but it was a time for me to regroup. And then I came to Las Vegas, and that's when I put on I was the founder of the Laughed Out Queer Comedy Festival, which was the first ever queer comedy festival in the entire state of Nevada. And that was to give voices to people more like me that were LGBT and not necessarily going to be accepted by the LGBT machine, because they're not necessarily watching out to say what they're supposed to say. And I was very proud of that festival. I worked on that with Jocelyn Sharp and Stephen Roberts. And I was very proud of not only the way that we worked together, but on that festival, we had pretty much every kind of LGBT you could have. We had pansexual, we had bisexual, we had transgender, we had people of color. It was all the way around just a really great representation as far as I went. The headliners that showed up were really great. The way that we were able to treat the comics was really great. Some of the events that we were able to put on, just some of the relationships that people made with other comedians. And it really was everything that I wanted it to be, because I wanted people to get seen by, we held it at the LA Comedy Club in the Strat. The entire festival was held there. And it was only 4 days, I think, that we had the festival. Tim Dillon came and did the headline the Sunday show. He was originally supposed to headline the Saturday show, but things were really starting to take off for him. That was more towards the beginning of now the monster that he's turned into, as far as just being everywhere and making the level. But he was still making good money, but just not at the level he's at now. And so I was friends with him, and so he came out as a favor to me. And he was originally supposed to be Saturday, and then he was like, "I got this weekend at this club that I really wanted to get into." And he was like, "I can be there on the Sunday. I don't mind flying myself out. I'll take half the money you guys said you would pay me." Because he was just didn't want to screw me over as a friend, but was telling me like I have to do this kind of thing. And of course, I'm like, well, then, yeah, we'll just bump you to the Sunday. Like, if we have to extend the festival for a day, because we had the Sunday anyway, we're going to have it like a regular show. I was like, then let's just bump you to Sunday and do it on the Sunday. So Tim Dillon showed up and did his set and gave a headlining set and was amazing like he is. And, yeah, just really proud of the way that festival turned out altogether, and really thankful to both Stephen and Jocelyn for the way that we work together. And of course, when you're working with people like that, you're going to have differences, because it was like a year, several months that we spent like working together, planning it, dealing with sponsors, and doing all the stuff that we had to do behind the scenes in order to make it happen. But at the end of the day, we all pulled through. We all made it happen. It was a great situation. So that was the last, or the most recent, like, big thing I did outside of, like, there was also, like, I became the first, because I go to China, or I used to go to China for 3 years in a row there, and was going to continue to work in China. But now with COVID, that's not really an option. But I became the first ever openly gay comedian to perform in Mongolia. So that was the thing. As far as China goes, I think I'm one of the only like gay comedians, especially like me, because I don't like that part. I don't change when like when I go on the road like that. So that's what they like me for. That's what they want me to go and be. I'm gonna go be an oddity and like the gayest man in China for the time that I'm there. The most open about it. And so that's that's a part of what I do while I'm there. Mongolia, technically, I could have gotten arrested for what I do, because you're not supposed to like talk about sex in a public, like performance or a public space like that. But, the U.S. ambassador to Mongolia was there. And so he loved me. And I didn't know I was doing crowd work with his secretary at a point, because I'm grilling this woman like, "You're secretary, huh?" and giving her a hard time. Then afterwards, I meet the ambassador to Mongolia. He's really cool. And then he was like, "That was my secretary you were giving a hard time to." And I was like, "Oh, that's great." We took pictures, and I got to show, because, as much as people sometimes with the LGBT stuff will make it seem like I'm a negative force or I don't say what I'm supposed to say. I showed because, like, because we were in the capital of Mongolia, the UB, I don't remember what it is because it's a long name, but we're in the capital of Mongolia. So like the entire LGBT center showed up, like all the LGBT people from Mongolia showed up because, I was going to be there and I'm gay. And like, I showed them just how gay you can be. You know what I mean? Like what's actually possible, and that you don't have to accept whatever it is your town is telling you, or your city, or however backwards they are, or whatever you're dealing with in that way. Look at me. This is what, you can possibly aspire to, or you can travel the world being as gay as you are, so like that's what's more important to me when it comes to LGBT. I perform in redneck clubs. There's a lot of redneck clubs that I perform in where they're not used to my level of gay. I have a great time. People enjoy meeting me after shows, talking to me after shows. Other gay people in those audiences at those redneck clubs are looking at me and being like, "That's what's possible. I guess it is possible to be as much me as I want to be. If that guy can do it and not get beat up, not get killed, he's been traveling the country and the world doing it, maybe I can do that too." So, like to me, that's more important than pleasing people that are already part of the choir, and so yeah, and then outside of that, just like, all the little smaller things and stuff like that. I know I've acted on some other stuff, but I was in a play in Hawaii. That was Murray Langston. I've done, I've like probably more stuff than I think about usually.
What about, haven't you done military for the truth?
Yeah, I've done military in Greenland, Thule, Greenland. I've done military in Diego Garcia, is that the name of that island? Yeah, you have to have military orders to get to that island. So, we all had to have these papers, and you fly on a blacked out plane, and you're not allowed to take pictures once you get there, you're allowed to take some pictures and stuff like that, but you're not allowed to take pictures on the flight there, I guess, because of geo-tracking on your phone or possibly like that kind of thing. And you're also in a blacked out, it's one of those where you get on the plane and the whole thing's blacked out, so you can't see anything out of the windows or anything like that. And so Chile, Greenland, Bahrain, Singapore, yeah, and I'm sure I've done other military stuff. Oh yeah, then I did Okinawa, which in Okinawa they have like a bunch of bases. I think we did like 5 of them. And so that we did during Thanksgiving time. And that was to me, that one was very special because they were honest with us in the fact that, look, you're going to be meeting a lot of like young kids that this is their first Thanksgiving ever away from their families. And so, like the things that people would talk to me about, because some of the kids, obviously, because they're from everywhere, they're military. And so they, and they're now, in the military. And some of the things they would talk to me about were so like silly to me, but it was like easy for me to like make them feel better because they just want to know like what's happening in California right now, you know what I mean? And they'd be like, I met a guy from Corona or like these different areas, and I'd be like, oh yeah, I performed at a little bar there, and so and so. And so it was like that one was good because especially doing this specifically, the Thanksgiving show specifically, because then like you got to make them feel a little better just by being a piece of home. And with me, like I always start off the same way with the military gigs. It's my favorite thing ever. I've gotten used to it because they're like, all right, we want you to be completely clean when you come out here. And I'm like, all right, I'll be completely. Then we get to like a week before the show and they're like, all right, like just do a PG. And I'm like, all right, do a PG. You know what? PG-13. And then I'm like, all right, then PG-13, and then they're like, you know what? Just make them laugh. And so I just go out and like, at that point, they've given me license to do whatever I want to do. In Chile, Greenland specifically, I think it was the colonel, they said, they were like, if the colonel gets up and walks out during the middle of your set, then that's a good thing. Because it means that he's fine with it going on stage, but he just can't be around for it. And so, like, right at the beginning of my set, because in Chile, Greenland, I guess they had heard about, like, I think the booker had, like, tipped them off to, like, how I performed, and so they put me last, you know what I mean? And so, like, the colonel stayed through the entire show, like, dancer, singer, another comedian. And then I got on, and about 5 minutes into my set, he stands up, and then everybody just starts laughing, and he waves and walks out. And like everybody just started cheering, because I was doing good and anybody couldn't be around for it.
Do you remember anything that military people said that touched your heart that you've never been able to forget?
With me, it was because, like, with me, I get a lot of the like when it comes to military and even redneck, it's always like, the letting me know how accepting they are that touches my heart, with people. Because they'll always like, like they're just that, like, and it's not any one particular person, it's more like just kind of a lot of people will do that, but they'll just, like, the thing that touches my heart the most is how much people always want me to know that I'm safe.
Oh, that's so cool.
Like I have so many people tell me, like, at those gigs like that, like, I have your back. If anything happens, if anybody messes with you, let me know, that kind of stuff. And for me, that's usually what will touch my heart the most. But like as far as personal stories, people don't tell me a lot of those because I make the announcement during my set a lot of times. Like you can talk to me, but not too much. I don't.
Totally.
So
I've heard that.
Yeah,
I can see them coming up to you going, yeah, never mind.
Yeah, that's my thing. Like you can say hi after the show, but let's not talk too much. I don't need to know too much about your life.
It's so funny. So Ty Rivera that you are that way. What's the what is the highest thing that's happened in your career that I don't know that you're so thankful? Is it your whole career or the people that have come along to help you, or what's the best high point you had, or a low point?
You know, the low point, I don't really think about things in terms of low points because, you know, like,
I kind of thought you didn't.
yeah,
You
the
know,
more
once I
that,
asked her, I was like, things like that.
yeah, the more life experience you get in comedy, the better your comedy is going to be. And, you know, like, as far as the outside world perceives, the lower down you go, then the higher the next thing is. You know what I mean? The next time you hit another high, people are like, wow, he came all the way from that to doing that now. So, like, you know, in the last year, I guess it's been, you know, like, to the outside world, maybe it seemed kind of rough. And there have been points in the last year where I've lost some friends and stuff like that, just as far as they didn't turn out to be like what I thought they were going to be. And like, some people didn't have my back the way that I thought they would, maybe. But even that, I don't look back on and think is a particularly low point. You know, I mean, like, it's just stuff that happens. And I'm not even mad at those people, or I don't hold hard feelings, or it's not something I dwell on or anything like that. For me, I just keep working and keep making stuff happen. And then the next time, like I said, the next time I do something big, then everybody's going to have me on their shoulders again anyway. And since I have no hard feelings, there's nothing for me to really forgive. You know, if anybody ever wants to approach me and be cool again, I'm open to that. But as far as the high point in my career, I feel like that's still coming up. You know what I mean? Like, the highest point is still coming. So I'm not, like, right now, I'm just letting everything happen the way that it needs to happen. And, you know.
Do you have a benchmark that you have to hit in order to know for yourself that you've made it?
As far as having a benchmark, like, no, because I've already done what I wanted to do originally, you know, like, even being able to work as much as I've been able to work, like, for me, it was making it, you know what I mean? Like, yeah, there's the other making it, you know, where you make millions of dollars and, you know, everybody knows your name and whatever else. But the more I do it, the less I feel like I want that, you know, like, dealing with what Dave Chappelle is dealing with right now doesn't look fun to me. You know, I mean, like, having people, and Dave Chappelle is handling it like a champ, and I think Dave Chappelle is a hero, not necessarily for what he said, but just for the fact that he won't back down off of it, and he does speak up for a certain amount of people. And the thing is, whether the LGBT community likes it or not, those are conversations that need to happen. If you want to be accepted, which I'm 100% for, especially trans people, because, like I said, I had so many trans people coming up and I saw the discrimination. So I'm 100% for trans people having the same rights as everybody else and being treated like everybody else. But when you talk about being treated like everybody else, all of us get made fun of in jokes. Whether you're gay, you're Mexican, whatever you are. So you can't be like, I want to be like everybody else, and then be like, oh, but you can't joke about me. Okay, well, we've been joking about Black people for years. We joke about white people all the time. We joke about Asians, Latinos. Everybody gets joked about. But trans, that's where we draw the line. What do you mean? That's not equality right there. That's preferential treatment. And so for me, like, you know, I don't necessarily know that that's like what I want to do. My thing that I want to do next is get an actual Vegas residency, which, you know, is something that I had worked towards earlier in the summer, and it looked like it was going to happen. And then we had some stuff change on us, and so it didn't happen. But even that, I wasn't particularly disappointed about. I was like, this just wasn't the right time for it, you know, like, because we did all the numbers and everybody was super nice. You know, the Thunderbird Hotel, Chanclas, which was a part of, you know, they're the bar that was kind of sponsoring it in a way and helping me out. And they're still good friends of mine. And so it's like, I guess maybe if people had like malicious intentions, or the people around me had malicious intentions, maybe I'd have more of a, you know, like a bitter feel about it. But when it's like everybody is trying to help you and then it just isn't going to work out, how can you be mad at anybody, or how can you even be mad at the situation? You know, it's just not the time. The fact that everybody would even care and anybody would try that hard to help in the first place, to me, should make you feel good. You know, so when, like, we had the conversation, because, like, there was a minute where there was somebody tried to start a rumor that, like me and Chanclas had some falling out because of that situation. And it's like the behind the scenes on that was me and Chanclas were so like both trying to figure out how to make that happen that there would be no way, unless you're a true asshole, to have any kind of falling out with people over that. Like at that point, it would just be like, oh, what, you don't understand math? Or you know what I mean? You don't understand how business works? Or what exactly is the breakdown where you think somebody screwed you over when everybody was trying as hard as they could to make it happen? So, like I think that's also part of the reason that I have the attitude that I have about everything is because there's a term like pronoia, like people have paranoia, which is where everybody's out to get them. I have pronoia where I feel like everybody wants to see me do better. So even the people that don't like me, I know they secretly do cheer for me. Even the ones that like, say the worst things about me, it's like, I get it, you know what I mean? It's sort of like pulling a girl you like pigtails or that kind of thing, So yeah, they think they're being malicious or whatever, but really I know that there's even good intent there.
Yeah, people love you and revere you. When you walk in a room, like I've told you this before, but when you come into a mic, there's a buzz.
Thank you.
Ty is,
Thank you.
they gotta step up their game and watch what they're doing. Ty is, like it elevates the room to have it there.
Yeah, and also I feel like that's where I make more of a change because like, with what's it called, with all the stuff that's been happening and stuff like that, like it would be a lie to say that I don't work like the mainstream clubs less, or like, one club in particular that I used to work all the time less. I don't hold hard feelings towards them either, that's what it is. Do I think that maybe it was a little bit of a misstep on their part in the way that they treated me? Yeah, maybe a little bit, but that's a conversation that I could have with them person to person at some point. But as far as where it's put me, for right now, I do as many of the tougher rooms as I can possibly do because I feel like that's where I'll grow better. It's also letting me mentor a lot of the newer comics and like show them, like I said with the gay people, you know what I mean? But in this case, it's just like up and coming open micers and stuff like that. I show them what's possible. I show them that even though you may think a room is impossible or nobody's going to laugh, they will actually laugh if you get up and show them something. And I don't look at that in a competitive way, like, oh, it's because I'm so much better than you or anything like that. I think you should draw confidence from watching me do what I do, because if it's possible for me, it's definitely possible for you. You just have to figure out your formula to make what I just made happen for yourself.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So when you give feedback to people, do they receive it well?
I only give feedback to people if they ask for it. So yeah, they usually do receive it well. And I mean, like, I'll even like broach it with, if I can be completely honest, this is something that I think you need to work on. And I try to be as constructive as possible because I know a lot of the comics do look up to me. And I don't want to break anybody. I don't want to make anybody want to quit or feel like quitting. I want you to take what I say and be like, okay, this is something I can actually apply. Saying you suck isn't good enough. You know what I mean? And I could easily do that. Just like, yeah, work on it, shit. You know what I mean? But like, so I try to be very technical in the critiques I give and really critique the set and not the person. And I feel like almost anybody with the hard-headed, the people that are in their own way will keep themselves from going anywhere. If you refuse to take anything in, if you refuse to accept that the audience isn't laughing, if you just won't be honest with yourself, you won't get ahead. But if you're willing to hear constructive criticism, I feel like anybody can like get themselves funny enough to be able to work. And then once you get that part, then you'll start getting better and better because more stage time will make you naturally get better and you'll become a better writer. So, yeah, people have been very open to the constructive criticism that I give.
Amazing. Because I know that when you've given me feedback, it's always been something that is truthful and I can apply. I can hear it.
Yeah, well, your particular case, because I really like that you are a true student of comedy, and I do like that you will take time and write. Like, every time I come back to you, you've taken my feedback and you've integrated it into your set in your own way, because that's something else I'm big on. I don't want to take over your voice. I don't want you doing me, and not because I'm worried about competing with you, you know what I mean? It's not like you would be able to be me. I wouldn't be able to be you. We're completely different people. But I don't like, I don't need Linda Marcus Smith to suddenly be the dirty lady on the scene, or like start taking on my stuff. Like, you have your voice, so let's work on that. Let's work on making things. And I like that you were clear with me from the beginning on that too. Like you told me, I want to keep my voice, but I just want to tighten up the stuff that I have. And so that's also the way that I think about it with other comedians, even other gay comedians, because, other gay comedians have asked me to help them with stuff or just to give them advice or whatever. And I give them advice that's suited to them. Because I remember when I was coming up, straight guys would try to give me advice sometimes, but they give me the most stereotypical, like, what people think of gay type things. And I'd be like, yeah, that's not really my personality, or that's not really what I'm thinking. So I know that I could maybe get a cheap laugh off of that or whatever, but it's just not, it's not good for me. So I also try to keep that in mind dealing with people is like, what's their voice? What are they doing?
I love that. When you, I had a question. Now my question slipped my mind. I don't remember it.
Must have been a lie.
It's a lie.
That's
It's
what my
probably a
mom
good
was.
place to stop.
That's what my mom always said.
My mom too.
Yeah.
We're related. I knew
Apparently, we have the same mother. Who knew? We were sisters this whole time.
My mother could be a bitch. What about her?
Oh, yeah. I told you we're sisters.
Well, tell people where you want them to give you more traffic.
You know what? I want people to find me on Instagram at official Ty Rivera. That's the platform that I want to build the most. And then from there, you can get to my YouTube, find your way there. It's YouTube. Like I already said, if you didn't hear in the beginning, just search Ty Rivera, ThairIrera, on YouTube, and you'll find me there. And I appreciate anybody that watches this, and I appreciate you, Linda, for having me on and letting me for a little while.
Oh, it was amazing. I love hearing your story. Is there anything you want to say here at the end that we didn't cover?
No, I feel good about everything. I feel like we've chatted about a lot of stuff, and I feel like the most important parts I got out. So, I mean, I'm sure later on tonight I'll be like, damn it, I should have said.
No, I'll do that. I'm going to remember the question. I forgot. Dang it.
Oh, yeah, I'm pregnant. So, Venmo, Ty Rivera Comedy, Cash App, Ty Rivera, because I'm about to be a mother. Kids are expensive. You understand.
Thank you so much, Ty Rivera, guys. Go follow him on official Ty Rivera Instagram. You heard him say that's important to him. And he's also got the Unbothered podcast on Ty Rivera YouTube. So there you go.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Everybody